Hello and welcome to the Liner Notes Club. I'm Phil, and today we're joined by Des Tong, musical director and bass player with Sad Café. And Sad Café were formed in Manchester in the mid-70s, and their hits include songs like Everyday Hurts, Run Home Girl, La Di Da, Strange Little Girl. And in this conversation, Des takes us right back to his early formative musical experiences, through to joining the band, times on the road, in the studio, and the current lineup of Sad Café with new material and live shows planned. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Don't forget, if you want to get in touch with any guest suggestions or contributions, you can do that at phil@offthefloor.media, and I'll pick that up. But in the meantime, enjoy this conversation with Des Tong on the Liner Notes Club. So good morning, Des. We've got Des Tong, bass player, musical director of Sad Café. Thanks for joining me this morning. Much appreciated.
Morning, my pleasure. My pleasure.
We caught up with you about 6 weeks ago down in Barnoldswick for a couple of. It was a miniature residency.
Yeah.
A couple of
two great nights. 2 great nights. Always are.
Absolutely.
Always are.
I really enjoyed the couple of days spent with you all. Before we get into the present day format of Sad Café, can we rewind and talk about your sort of musical beginnings on a personal level and how you got into it and what your first few musical years looked like?
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. So, well, my dad was a pianist, fabulous pianist. We lived in Manchester, and he used to play at all the big hotels. And well, I was about 11, and he used to play me various things like jazz, Oscar Peterson. He loved Oscar Peterson, and I wanted to get into music, but he said, "Look, I'm going to buy you a double bass, because bass players are always, to a pianist, you always need a great bass player." So from the age of like 11 onwards, I was playing this double bass, which was tough going, because when you're a little kid, strings like that, they kill your fingers. But, I got through that. There was one, and I do this regularly on interviews, and I always quote it, but there was one day I used to have bass lessons in the cricket pavilion, in the room where they kept the stumps and the pads. That was the only place, because my school, it was grammar school, they didn't have a music policy. It's not like today. So this guy used to come in and I used to have a lesson. And there was one lunchtime where I was about 2 minutes late for registration. And my teacher pulled me out in front of the whole class, and he said, like, "Where have you been?" And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, sir. I've been having my double bass lesson." And he said to me, "When will you realize that you will never make a living from music?" So there's my first challenge in life.
That was challenge accepted.
Yeah. So, and then from there, I mean, all my mates were into like the Stones and the Small Faces and the Beatles and that. So the double bass became a bass guitar. And I was always into soul music. I was never really into the rock side of it. Joined a local band with some mates from school. And then I was headhunted by this band who were all older than me, a lot older than me. But it's great for experience, and I'm the sort of person that I never resist a challenge. So I joined this band that were called Henderson Chambers, and we used to do loads and loads of house parties and clubs, and we got a residency in a local club in a place called Ashton-under-Lyne. And I learned so much from it. The experience was incredible. These guys have been around for a long time. And it was just so much fun. Then I got a call from an old friend of mine who was a sax player. And he was in a soul band. And he got this, he'd contacted this this agent had contacted him, a guy called Roy Tempest, who's, if you look him up, he's one of these scoundrels from the late 60s and 70s. And he used to bring American artists over, and they needed a backing band. So the first gig that we did was with Inez and Charlie Fox. Now, Inez and Charlie Fox had a big hit called Mockingbird. And so we toured the UK with them as their band. And then 2 weeks after that, we did Fontella Bass, who did Rescue Me. So that was my grounding. While I was doing that, I met, we backed 5 guys from Liverpool called The Chants, 5 black singers. And I got on really well with them. And they asked me if I'd be like their MD when they were traveling around. So like I'm like 18. Wow. First thing we did was we went to Brussels for a month. And then we came back, and then we went to Palma in Mallorca for a month. And then we came back and we went all around Germany. And this was like incredible, you know. I mean, I'd not left school very long, sort of thing. And I'm
so
sort
like
of
with those American acts, did you have any kind of rehearsal period, or were you just like, sort of picking stuff up off the record and arriving at the gig ready to go?
That's right. We were given a list of songs that they were going to do and the keys that they were going to do them in. And then, so we just turned up and we had one run through and off we went, which was, you know, that's the way things worked.
Well, a hell of an education. I'm not pulling too many faces when things are going awry, and
yeah. So I was then with The Chants, and when was it? 1971. We did a week at a club in Birmingham called Barbarella's, which was a fantastic nightclub, and we did a week with the Four Tops. We supported the Four Tops. You know, I mean, think about it. 7 nights in this club, and it was packed every night. You know, it was amazing. And then from there, I sort of I went off and I worked with The Real Thing. One of the guys in The Real Thing, Chris Amu, was Eddie Amu, who was in The Chants. He was his younger brother. And right. Eddie eventually ended up joining the Real Thing. But yeah, so we toured around Europe with them. Then I met Jimmy Helms. Gonna Make You an Offer You Can't Refuse. Jimmy Helms, who's now with London Beat, became great friends. And then this was all traveling. You know, we were spending our life in a transit van, going up and down. I mean, we would do crazy things like we were based in Manchester. We would drive to Southend. We would do the gig, and then we'd drive home the same night. You know, because you could at those days. The amount of traffic was nowhere near what it is now. So you could do that, and the price of petrol was very minimal, you know. So then I got involved in the session scene in Manchester, because a few of my friends who I'd met were doing sessions, and I got a phone call, you know, would you come down and play on such and such a thing? And I did one of Lisa Stansfield's very, very first recordings. And, you know, it was great because it sort of opened up the horizons from my music. You never knew what you were going to get. You had to be prepared to play anything. And we did play anything. But did
you find that your sort of more formal music education that helped? Did that help you pick things up quickly?
I think it was just an attitude. You know, you develop this attitude of you were never going to be like, well, all I play is soul or all I play is rock. You just had this open mind to what the client wanted, you know, and at the end of the day, they were paying, so you know you did what they asked. And whilst I was doing that, there was a team of musicians and singers doing jingles, you know, TV, radio jingles, and one of those guys was Paul Young from Sad Café, and they just started to, like, about 1978, 79. They just about started having some success. So I did quite a lot of stuff with Paul. and also Ian Wilson and Vic Emerson, who were all in the band. And so I got to know them really well. And at the time, I was in about 5 different bands. I was in a soul band, a guy called Dougie James, and Soul Train. And we supported the Jacksons on their UK tour. Which was quite amazing. It was the same year that Michael Jackson went on and recorded Off the Wall, but he'd come back. He'd agreed, and he'd come back, and he'd appeared on this tour with his brothers. And there was one gig we did at this place in Birmingham called Bingley Hall. It's been demolished now. It's where the Symphony Hall is in Birmingham. But it was this big exhibition centre, really old building. And Tony had one dressing room. So, I mean, we'd done about half a dozen gigs with the guys already. And they went, "Oh, come and use our dressing room." So you've got this huge dressing room with like us on one side, the reprobates, and then on the other side you've got the Jacksons having a prayer meeting before they went on.
Wow.
But all great experiences, and then 1981, and I'd been doing some stuff at Granada TV, and Paul rang me. He used to call me Desley, and he says, "Desley, can you come round to the house? And I've got this song I'm working on. Can you put a bass line on it for me?" So, yeah, of course I can. So I went round, played it, and he said, "I love it. I love it. What are you doing tonight? Can you come to Strawberry in Stockport and put it down?" So I said, "Yeah." Now, I'd done things with Paul before on his little side projects. So I was anticipating it being one of those. But when I turned up, all the guys from Sad Café were in the control room. So I was like, "Oh, it's a bit weird." Anyway, I played the track, and they all loved it. And they said, "Can you come back tomorrow night and do another one?" So I said, "Yeah." And it was like night time. It wasn't during the day. It was like, when all the staff had gone home, sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So the following night I turned up, and the studio owner was there, as was the bass player. So I was like, "Oh dear, this is a bit embarrassing." But straight away, John Stimpson, the bass player, said, "Look, Des, don't worry about it, because I'm actually stepping back, and I'm getting into management. So the guy, Paul in particular, wants you to do this, and I've got no problem with that. So, go ahead." So 2 sessions then became into the album called Olay. And then at the end of the album, they said, "Right, well, we're going to do a tour. Do you fancy doing it?" Wow. Yeah. So I went from being like a studio player who was in 5 little local bands to walking out on stage for like 5,000 people, and becoming Des Tong from Sad Café, as opposed to before I was just a musician in a band.
That first album, the songs were sort of fully formed. You were sort of laying down the bass parts, not overly involved in the writing process as such in that first instance.
Yeah, I mean they had quite. I think they had about half the album was written in some form or other, but we spent quite a lot of time in the studio creating new tracks. So although yes, I wasn't a writer. They would come in with an idea, and then it was one of the reasons why I was asked to join, was because they wanted my feel, my sort of rocky soul feel, which I put into the songs. So it was it was great times. Like I say, suddenly I had this persona, and it's something I've tried to say to the guys in the current band. You got to understand that you're no longer just a player in a band, because the people who come to see you, it's like a family. Sad Café fans are like a family. They're very supportive. They're very loyal, and they feel like they're part of you, you're part of them. I mean, we've got this girl who does our appreciation society page, and she's brilliant, you know, and we've got loads and loads of members. But she'll find that, say, like Dave, who's a guitar player, works with Tony Christie, and he's done a gig and there's a video on, and she'll tag it and she'll say, "Our Dave with Tony Christie." You know, and that's
definitely something I noticed at those gigs. The audience are fanatical.
I mentioned it one night, right in front of me. I mean, you know, 4 foot in front of me, there was a lady, and she sang the words to every single song that we did. She knew them by heart. And I mentioned it during the show, you know, and she spoke to me afterwards, and she said, actually, I first started with Sad Café like the year before you joined. But she said, it's like, it's for me, it's just a lovely situation where I can come along and hear my favorite songs, and you play them for me, you know. And in the past we've had a couple of people who took exception to the fact that because Youngie died and Ian's no longer in the band and Victor died, and you know, what, you can't be Sad Café because there's no original members. Well, I mean, I've been in the band since 1981, but the attitude of people like her is, we don't care who's in the band. We want to hear Black Rose. We want to hear Everyday Hurts. You know, we want to hear all our favorite songs played great, because we do have a great band that plays them properly, you know. And
yeah, I was going to say that the standard of the musicianship within the band is absolutely fantastic. And
it's got to be.
Obviously, you've had, like you mentioned, the passing of Paul Young, and more recently Barry. Has it felt natural to keep the momentum up? Has it felt like the right thing to do to keep it fresh, keep it moving, and keep it as a sort of an alive entity?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Barry it wasn't a shock because we knew. But it was like, oh God, you know, we were just getting a head of steam up after the previous situation, and then, you know, we lost Barry. So it's always like, it's like 2 steps forward, 4 steps back. I think well, no, I'm not hoping. I know we've got a really good guy now, Matt Wolf, and Matt's a lovely guy, and he's really sort of embraced what the band's about. He's got a great attitude, and we're writing new stuff, you know, first in 35, 40 years. So
obviously, given the musicianship and the quality of the musicianship in the band now, is that something that you felt you needed to really utilize and inject into some new material?
Yeah, because you can get labelled as like a heritage band, and all you do is the back catalogue. Whereas we want to go forward. We will always do the back catalogue. You have to, because that's where your fans are coming from. But you also need to prove that you can go forward and do new stuff. And so, you know, I've been pushing for that for a long time. Myself and Dave, the guitar player, have written 2 tracks. Myself and Matt, the singer, has written a song, and we're already doing one of Dave's songs. So, you know, it's not easy, because you've got to keep it in context. You know, you can't step too far out of the style of the band, although we don't want to be seen as just, they're just churning sort of stuff out that sounds like the old stuff. We want it to sound more modern, but equally we want it to sound like us, you know. And the reaction to the new song that we did when we were at Barn Oldswick was fantastic, and loads of people coming up afterwards and saying, "Oh my God, that was brilliant! I can't wait to hear the new stuff." So, you know, the reaction has been great.
Is that sort of is the sort of short term aim a new album's worth of material? Are you sort of chipping away at that as and when you
Yeah,
can?
that is the plan. I mean, after this, I'm getting in touch with the guys, and we're going to sort out a meeting. And I mean, we've got some shows booked in, but it would be nice to be able to get at least one new track out, just to say, look, guys, we are around, and this is where we're going, and this is our new stuff. So, yeah,
Yeah, there seems to be, yeah, like I said, from my experience and being down there with some of your most loyal followers, there's
yeah,
an appetite and a hunger from their point of view to to get the sort of new material up and running and enjoy you in your sort of your newest incarnation. And you're right, yeah. Matt does a great job. He's really captivating visually, and obviously he's absorbed the stuff. And as a Stockport lad, he's sort of cut from the same cloth as everybody.
absolutely
So I think
fits.
that helps.
Yeah, it fits in
Yeah,
perfectly.
sort of gels
Yeah.
across the board. Yeah, yeah. And that, yeah, I mean, it's really well put together stuff. It's not three chord wonders, is it? It's I mean,
Oh no,
vocally it's fantastic. It's harmonically ambitious. Where does that, is that your, I guess, your jazz sensibilities coming in somewhere, or
well, obviously the band as they were when they first started, they were all very proficient singers and players. I mean, we struggled really. I mean, 79 they had the Everyday Hurts, that was a big hit, which in a way was possibly the worst track for them to have a hit with, because it didn't represent what the band was about. I mean, the band was a rock band, and that came out, but it hit a spot. It was like it was in the middle of the punk era, so you were being bombarded with like trashy guitars and all that sort of stuff, and up pops Sad Cafe with this ballad. But it sort of, I think it was like the girls in the dorms at university. It hit them, they loved all that sort of stuff, and it just took off. It became like an anthem for a lot of people. But
without a doubt.
we did suffer at times. I mean, a few articles that were written, about gigs that we did. Um, a lot of them, especially the punky sort of journalists, they can play that lot, and that was all. That was sort of held against you, that you could play.
Yeah, as if it were a bad thing.
Yeah. Whereas, the guys in and I'm not knocking them, because, the punk bands that came out, the energy coming off them was awesome, but maybe they weren't the best players. They became the good players, because that's what happens. You start off and you can do three chords, and then somebody shows you another one. Oh, hang on a minute, that's nice. And suddenly, you get better and better. But that was what we were up against. I mean, there was one time we played at the Hammersmith Odeon, or the Apollo, whatever it's called now. But and before the show, there was a journalist. He came in the green room, and he ate most of our sandwiches and drank most of our cider. And then the next week, one of the magazines came out, and it said, "I don't like saxophones. Sad Cafe have a saxophone. I don't like Sad Cafe." And that was his review of the gig. But, you just, today's newspaper's tomorrow's chip paper, and, you just ignore it and get on with it. But, yeah, we've had all
Exactly.
that.
And I guess you had this sort of brotherhood and within the band, don't you? You're not out there on your own taking all this personally. You've got that camaraderie and a bit of
Yeah,
resilience,
yeah.
haven't you? And that's
We talk about it, and you just say, whatever, and just get on with it. If you
yeah.
if you actually take those sort of things to heart, forget it. Because if you can't take criticism of any sort, really, Even if it's rubbish criticism like that was, forget it. But we just get on with it. Yeah, yeah.
Just talk us through your 2026 plans.
I think what I would like to do is have new material coming along, so that we can probably towards the middle of the year put together a nice little run of dates, maybe do some festivals, and have this new material ready, so it just rubber stamps the fact that we are here, and we are around, and we're doing, it's like Sad Café 2026. Well, Sad Café now, as we as the Facebook pages, because that's what we are. We're not Sad Café then, although we do the music from then, but we are now. It's the lineup. It's new material, and it's what I would like to think that people will accept where we're going.
Yeah, and like I said, it seems like the natural thing to do, given the musicianship in the band, to keep growing and not looking back all the time. Keep growing and injecting all that into something fresh that excites you and excites the fans.
It would be very easy to just go, yeah, okay, well, we'll just do the same old stuff, go round and round. But we're not like that. I'm not like that, and I know the guys are not like that. We've all got like an originality streak in us somewhere, and so we nobody goes, no, I don't want to do that. They all go, wow, yeah, let's do it. So keep the momentum up. Who knows? Let
it be a vehicle for all you guys as sort of combined influences and experience, and keep the thing moving. Definitely.
Yeah, Pete Barton said to us, you're always welcome here. Just let me know. Give me a couple of months' notice, and you can come back and do it again. I mean, my good friend Bevan was up, and I was talking to him a few weeks ago, and he didn't know. I mean, he said, "Oh, we're doing this wonderful place up north. I mean, you wouldn't believe it. It's a tiny little place." And I went, "Oh, you're talking about Barn Olswick, aren't you? Yeah, we've done it about 3 times." Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, we had. I think they did 3 over 2 days.
That's right.
3 gigs down there over 2 days. Yeah. But yeah, it was great. Again, really good bunch of guys. Top drawer musicians. It was a great couple of days.
Well, Bev and I become good friends because a few years ago I used to work for the local TV channel down here in Birmingham, and I wrote a series of shows where I plotted it all out. But the plan was to drive around Birmingham and talk about all the old venues, and pubs and clubs and the musos and things like that. And I asked Bev if he'd do it with me, because he'd always said to me, "Oh, I'd love doing that sort of thing." So we did 3 shows, and they were the most watched on local TV, because they hit a spot, that nostalgia. People would stop us in the street and come up to me and say, "I met my wife in that club you talked about," or the guys would say, like, "Me and my mates used to go in that bar, it was amazing." And so we were asked by a friend if we would do it as a stage show, so take it one step further. So what I've done is I've created a presentation, and I've got videos and old photographs, and we have a couple of guests, and we now do a stage show. When I was talking to Bev a while back, we were looking for venues to do it in, and there's a theatre in Lichfield called the Garrick Theatre that has as well as the big auditorium, it has a studio which holds about 150 people, and they Quill, the band he does, they do it in the big auditorium. So they gave me the guy's address, and I spoke to him, and he said, "Wow, that's a great idea. We'd love to do it." sent him all the information, and they put it in their brochure. Now the gig is at the end of March next year, and it's sold out.
Wow.
It's just because people love it.
So what's the format? Is it you and Bev sort of doing a history lesson around the sort of Birmingham scene? Yeah, right.
With photographs, with videos. He talks about when he was with the Move, how the Move started. We talk about all the clubs. We talk about, when I was with the Jacksons in the Bingley Hall, and he was in this place called the Rum Runner, and you met the Everly Brothers and all that sort of stuff. And there's all photographs as well. So it's like a history. It's the history of Birmingham rock, as we call it. And it's been great.
And am I right in thinking? Sorry, am I right in thinking that you've written some books around this, based on the scene? Or explain that one.
Right. So when we finished, the success of this TV channel, a good friend of mine, a singer called Sissy Stone, who I write and work together with, she said to me, well, why don't you write a book about it? And I thought, well, there are some amazing books that have been written about Birmingham music. There's a guy called Jim Simpson who runs the Jazz Festival every year. He's got about 4 books out. And there's another guy called Laurie Hornsby, who's this Brum Rocks and Brum Rocks again. And they're amazing, these books. And the research that's gone into them is incredible. And I thought, I'm never going to do all that, because you can guarantee that you'd say like, oh, and so did a gig on Wednesday night at such and such, and somebody will go, well, actually it was a Thursday night because I was there, So I'm not even going to go there. But what I did do was, and this was never on my bucket list, was I thought I'll write a story, and I'll take all these little stories that Bev and I have been talking about, or, off camera, the little anecdotes that we've got, or the urban myths that, did it happen or didn't it happen? I'll take all of those, mix them all together. And I created 3 characters. There's a club owner and his wife and a musician. And the story is how they interact and how they meet up. And it starts off in the late 60s, which is when I started off. And I'm now up to next year. I've got my 6th book in the series comes out. They're called the Pete Peterson tapes. So it's books 1 to 6, all available on Amazon. But I wrote the first one, and this was like in 2018. And I really enjoyed it. And when I finished it, I thought, what shall I do now? So Sad Café did a gig up in Manchester, and a friend of mine on Facebook, a girl, came to the show. And afterwards I was talking to her, and she was a DJ on Radio Caroline. So I said to her, is this your job? Do you do that? So she said, oh, no. She said, I'm a proofreader. So, hello. So I told her about the book, and she said, send it to me. So I sent her the manuscript over. She got straight back to me. She said, Des, I can't put it down. It's amazing. I love it. She said, I know I'm not right, but she said, the club you're talking about, I've been there. And I thought, well, no, you haven't, because it's come out of my head. But she said, and I know that, but the way you've put it is, I can see that club. And I've had 2 or 3 other people say, oh, it's like Barbarella's in Birmingham, isn't it? No, because what they don't realise is I grew up in Manchester. So it might seem like it's based in Birmingham, but it can't be, because all my formative years were in Manchester, and also all around the country. And so every big city you went to, there was always the gangster who run the nightclub. There was always the underground scene that was going. And I've taken all those experiences and made them into this story. So She helped me edit it.
I was going to ask what. I mean, it interests me how these sort of like Manchester, Birmingham, these sort of industrial working class places are
Yeah.
the reason that they do have such an output of music. And what do you put that down to?
I don't know. Creativity has to come out of somewhere, doesn't it? You know, and like some places shout louder than others. So you've got Liverpool who shout louder than others about the Liverpool scene. Manchester are also very vociferous about the music. Birmingham are the glass half empty. Birmingham never shout about anything. Whereas, you know, heavy metal was started in Birmingham, Black Sabbath, you know. Bristol had a huge music scene down there. Newcastle, you know, so every big city had it. It was just the amount of exposure that they got was dependent.
I guess there was an infrastructure there in terms of places to play and sort of because during industrial boom and stuff like that, then the people did have a little bit of disposable income to go and spend on nights out and stuff like that.
When I first started, we would go up to the northeast, and you could work 7 nights, twice a night, and never play the same club twice. And you know, people like John Miles came from Newcastle, and what they called Fog on the Tyne, Lindisfarne. You know, people like that. Obviously, Liverpool had the same thing. Each big city had loads of clubs. You know, Manchester, you could work. You could work 7 nights and not do the same club twice. Yeah. You had all these amazing venues. Some of them were great, some of them were dumps, but you did them because that's what you did. And people could go out every night, and there wasn't the breathalyzer, and you know, so everybody drove every night and drank every night. But and it wasn't expensive. You know, they had the disposable income, and so it was a huge. You know, it was a huge scene in all the big cities, and so that's what I've done with the books. I'd finished it, and then lockdown hit. So, lockdown, I spent every day writing because I got the bug by then. You know, I loved it, having done that first one, and each one carries on. So, you know, if you start at the beginning, when you get to the end of book 1. There is an ending, but you want to know what happens next. So it continues in book 2, and the same thing in book 2, book 3. So after lockdown, Sad Café were playing in Birmingham at a place called the Jam House. A friend of mine, who's also an author, brought his friend along, introduced me, and he said, this is Andrew. He's a publisher. So, and he said, I believe you've written an autobiography. I said, no, it's not an autobiography. It's actually fiction. And in fact, my daughter asked me that one time. Is it autobiography? I said, better, if only. But Andrew said, send me it. So I sent it to him, and he said, oh, my God, the girl said, I can't put it down. Let's do it. So I said, oh, fantastic. Oh, by the way, I've got another 4. So, oh my God, he said, let's just do it one at a time. So we've done 5 up to now, and like I say, number 6 comes out. Then I've actually started on a spin-off of some of the characters that have been involved, some of my favorite characters. So and it's something that I don't know. I can't understand why I do it, because I never wanted to write a book. It was, like I say, it was never on my list of things to do. But now I do it. I love it. I love making storylines that are sort of divisive, and I get quite nasty with characters. And you know, there's there's a scene in Indiana Jones where he runs into this big marketplace in Marrakesh or somewhere, and all the people part, and in the middle there's a bloke with the swords doing that, and he and Harrison Ford gets his gun out and shoots him. That's how I treat my baddies. My baddies, if they're bad, they're dead. You know what I mean? They don't get away with it for so long, and then they have to go.
It's a totally different medium to a song when you're trying to convey something in 3-4 minutes. You can really go off and sort of take your time over revealing a character.
I've learned because I was talking to an author, and I was saying about we were talking about building tension and things like that. And there's a couple of instances where when I was reading back what I'd done, I realised I'd given the plot, I'd given the idea away too soon. Something I'd written, because it was in my head that I knew what the ending was of that section was going to be. I'd actually hinted at it there, and I thought, no, I've given that away. I got to take it out because I wanted it to be a surprise. And I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and he said, I remember reading your first book, and I went, and I was reading it and my wife was sitting next to it, and he went, oh my God, I didn't see that coming, out loud. And I went, so I've succeeded, because that was the whole point. It was meant to be a real shock. But if you give it away too soon, it's not a surprise. And I've learned, as I've gone on.
Songwriting, there has to be an economy there, and you are working somewhat to de facto standards, aren't you, in pop, as in sort of verse, pre-chorus, chorus, and things have to be revealed in such a way. Whereas I guess the written word, you've got much finer control over that. You're not working with such limitations.
I can be very devious with my characters. So I really enjoy it. It's lovely when you turn up to a gig and somebody comes up and says, "Can you sign your book?" which is nice. The band don't like it, but hey.
Well, I really appreciate you joining me this morning.
My pleasure.
I look forward to hearing Sad Cafe's new material with the new lineup. Keep doing what you're doing. We'll look forward to catching up with you. So
we'll be back. We'll be back.
Most definitely. Thank you, Des. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Phil. Good to speak to you.
So a massive thanks to Des. I hope you enjoyed that. And don't forget, if you want to get in touch, you can do that at phil@offthefloor.media. And I look forward to seeing you on the next one.